I'm not angry anymore. There are things that will still anger me, but I'm not angry anymore because I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. Of the family and the tabloid press, those certain members have decided to get into bed with the devil, right?
In a deeply emotional and unexpected moment, King Charles was brought to tears as he presented Prince Harry with one final, heartfelt gift. Years of tension, public scandals, and royal estrangement seemed to vanish, if only for a moment, as father and son stood face to face. This wasn't a political gesture or a PR stunt. It was something far more personal, more human. But what was this mysterious gift? And why did it move the king to tears? The powerful symbolism behind it left the entire royal circle stunned in silence.
He was shouting at me, I was shouting back at him. It wasn't nice, it wasn't pleasant at all. And he snapped, and he pushed me to the floor. I don't think that we can ever have peace with my family unless the truth is out there.
King Charles's final gift to the son who walked away. When King Charles completed his estate plan, royal advisors expected the usual: priceless artwork, ancient jewels, sprawling estates. It was all very typical. Each child would receive their share. Prince William, the heir, would naturally inherit the grandest share: palaces, royal collections, ceremonial duties. Princess Anne, always the dependable one, would be trusted with meaningful heirlooms, quiet symbols of the family's lasting legacy. But when it came to Prince Harry, Charles took an unexpected turn. Instead of jewels or land, he gave him a small, worn leather journal. No gold trim, no royal crest, just a simple, weathered book. Inside, page after page of King Charles's own handwriting spilled out. Words scribbled in the margins, emotions barely contained. The entries dated all the way back to 1997, the year Diana died. Palace aides reportedly exchanged baffled glances. One whispered, "This breaks tradition." Another, closer to the family, said quietly, "People were speechless." For Harry, a man who had long felt shut out by the very institution that raised and wounded him, this wasn't an inheritance. It was something deeper, something far more dangerous. It was raw. It was real. And no one knew what secrets it held. Why would a king offer his son something so deeply personal, so emotionally charged, and so potentially damning? That's what everyone in the palace was asking, and yet Charles had made his choice. No ceremony, no fanfare, just a sealed box delivered by hand. On top, a note, "To my son." No titles, no ranks, just a father's final, quiet reach toward the child who had turned away. This wasn't a gift, it was a confession. Let's move on to the next chapter to know what's inside that journal. Stay tuned.
Having seen my family and the institution's part in constantly feeding the British press with lies, mistruths.
The journal that shattered royal silence. Page after page, Harry found something he never imagined his father would reveal: vulnerability. The earliest entries were messy, rushed, almost unreadable. They started just days after Princess Diana's death. These weren't the words of a future king, but of a man drowning in sorrow and guilt. "I failed your mother. I feared I'd fail you too." That sentence appeared more than once, etched with deep regret. What followed was an outpouring of raw emotion, lines filled with shame, fear, and helplessness. Charles confessed he hadn't known how to comfort his sons, how to balance public duty with private heartbreak. He described sleepless nights, haunted by Diana's voice, wondering if she would ever forgive him. He didn't hide from blame. He wrote about his own coldness, his stiff formality, and his deep fear of showing emotion. He even questioned if the crown had robbed him of his ability to feel like a normal man. But the entries about Harry were the most heart-wrenching. Charles described a little boy who smiled through silent pain, who lashed out not to rebel but because he was lost. a child clinging tightly to his mother's memory while being steered into a life he never chose. "I saw it in his eyes," Charles wrote. "The same storm I carried, but without the armor." There were no royal filters, no tidy words. This wasn't prepared for the public. It was poured straight from a wounded father's heart, desperate to be understood at last. And with every page, one truth grew louder. This journal wasn't a gift. It was a confession, a long overdue attempt to explain the silence between them. Now, it was Harry's turn to read. But how would he go about it with the pain pressed into those pages? That's exactly what's unfolded next.
She's becoming a royal rock star.
And then
Everything changed. There's a hierarchy of the family. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
The day Harry faced his father's regret. The moment Harry unsealed the journal, something shifted deep within him. According to a palace insider, the package arrived without warning. No explanation, no paperwork, no message. Just a plain box, a courier's hand, and a request for a signature. Curious but confused, Harry accepted it and quietly retreated to his private library to open it alone. When he realized what he was holding, something in him cracked. A small, worn journal, his father's handwriting. Meghan, sensing something unusual, followed him a few minutes later. She found him sitting on the floor, surrounded by loose pages, his hands shaking. He was reading aloud, not for show, but because the words stunned him so deeply, he needed to hear them to believe they were real. "I feared I'd fail you too," he whispered, his voice breaking, tears falling without resistance. This wasn't anger. It wasn't relief. It was something heavier, something harder to name. Shock, perhaps. For years, Harry had accused Charles of emotional distance, of putting duty before family, of leaving him unguarded in a world that consumed him. And now, here were the raw, handwritten confessions of a father who admitted to those very failings, but also revealed a quiet, hidden pain of his own. Sources say Harry sat in silence for hours after reading the final page. One aide described him staring into the fireplace, as if seeing his entire childhood from the outside for the first time. He didn't reach for his phone. He didn't send a message to Charles. He just sat there. When Meghan returned later, she knelt quietly beside him and said, "He gave you what words could never say." This wasn't cooperation. Rather, it was something closer to the truth, a new path. But Meghan said something that changed everything. But what exactly did she say?
there was a war against Meghan to suit other people's agendas.
It's about hatred. It's about race.
It's a dirty game.
Meghan may be the reason the family survives. Meghan didn't flinch. She didn't interrupt or ask for explanations. As Harry read passages from the journal, some in disbelief, others in a whisper, she sat quietly, listening. No judgment, just presence. And when he finally paused, unsure what to feel, Meghan simply said, "Maybe this is the first real apology." For someone so often blamed for pulling Harry away from his royal roots, this moment could have stirred old wounds. But instead it seemed to open a door. According to palace insiders, Meghan gently encouraged Harry not to see the journal as manipulation, but as a fragile olive branch. Imperfect, maybe, but sincere. What came next surprised everyone. Not a press release, not a memoir excerpt. Meghan reportedly helped Harry draft a private letter in response. It wasn't an embrace of forgiveness, nor a closing of the door. Just an honest reply. "I hear you. I'm still hurt, but I see you now, too." It was the first time since stepping away from royal life that Meghan, in private, spoke kindly of Charles. She called the journal more than a gift, it's a release. And with that, something shifted. Meghan, once painted as the wedge, may have quietly become the bridge. But while Harry was sitting with the past, the palace was suddenly facing a storm. The journal's existence had leaked. No details, just one headline: King Charles's secret journal gifted to Prince Harry. No quotes, no spin, just shock. Within hours, royal PR teams were scrambling. Phones rang, emergency meetings began. No one had seen this coming. The journal hadn't gone through official channels. It wasn't catalogued, filed, or cleared. Most aides hadn't even known it existed. It wasn't a gift, one senior staffer reportedly said. It was a grenade. But how did Harry react? Stay with us as we find out. The confessions that shattered Harry's image of his father. The journal wasn't a royal biography. It wasn't a political move or part of a carefully planned legacy. It wasn't meant to be read at all. And that's exactly what made it so powerful. These weren't speeches crafted by aides or stories cleaned up for the public. They were raw, unedited reflections from a man who, despite wearing a crown, had never truly known peace. For Harry, a son who had spent years feeling pushed aside, misunderstood, and unloved, reading his father's handwritten confessions was like entering a world he never believed existed. One entry described Charles watching Diana break down in tears after another brutal tabloid story. I stood in the doorway. I didn't go to her. I didn't know how. He blamed himself for being cold, for failing to protect her, and even more so, for not protecting their boys. Another entry, written months after Diana's death, spoke of Charles watching William and Harry playing in the garden. They needed comfort. I knew it. But I felt too broken to give it. When Charles wrote about Harry, the words were even more personal and more painful. He confessed that Harry's outbursts scared him, not because they were rebellious, but because they reminded him of Diana. He raged like her. He loved her, and I feared I'd lose him the same way. There were reflections on missed birthdays, thoughts of giving up royal life, even secret fantasies of fleeing with his sons to Scotland. Far from cameras, crowns, and court expectations. I wanted to be better, he wrote again and again. I didn't know how. For Harry, these were the words he never expected to see, not in a speech, not in a book, and certainly not scribbled in a trembling hand. But how powerful is the journal? And was it really a solution, despite the emotional impact it had on Harry? Let's find out. The Journal That Left. William and Anne Reeling. The journal may have been handed to Harry, but its ripples reached far beyond him. Within days, word spread quietly through the royal corridors. William and Princess Anne had been blindsided. Neither had been told in advance. Neither knew the journal even existed. And neither had ever received anything that raw or revealing from Charles. Certainly not in writing. William's reaction, according to sources, was subdued. All he said was, it was his to give. But behind closed doors, insiders say he was deeply shaken, not because of what Charles wrote, but because of what it could mean. If the public learned that Harry, not the heir, was entrusted with the most intimate piece of Charles's soul, how would that rewrite the royal story? Anne's response was far less restrained. Known for her steadiness and no-nonsense attitude, she reportedly told aides, "That's personal fire. Don't play with it." She wasn't warning Harry. She was warning Charles. With one deeply personal act, he had opened a door that could never be shut again. And then came the twist. One section of the journal wasn't addressed to Harry at all, but to William, a plea, a warning, a father's final hope, a message no one saw coming. The journal was powerful, yes, but it wasn't a solution. Despite the emotional impact it had on Harry, the royal silence remained. There were no warm phone calls, no quiet visits, no signals of a thaw. Harry still holds no patronages, no military roles. His children, Archie and Lilibet, still lack royal titles. And King Charles, despite pouring his soul into those pages, has never publicly admitted it exists. One palace insider put it best. It was a whisper of peace wrapped in a closed door. So what was William's reaction based on the carefully read revelation? Let's find out. King Charles's warning that left William speechless. It was just a single page, short, almost simple, but it shifted the entire meaning of the journal. At the top, in Charles's unmistakable handwriting, were two powerful words: forgive him. The rest was addressed directly to William. And unlike the formal tone expected between monarch and heir, this was something else entirely. It wasn't a king commanding a future ruler. It was a father speaking to his son with raw honesty and quiet desperation. "You will rule," Charles wrote. "You must lead, but never lead with coldness. If you lose your brother, the crown will mean less. Not to the world, to you." The message was emotional and urgent. Charles confessed that in his attempt to protect the monarchy, he had neglected something more fragile: his family. He warned William that duty, when taken without heart, could harden a person, that the palace's traditions could quietly destroy the very people meant to uphold them. "If you don't protect Harry," he continued, "you'll become me, and that is a fate I wouldn't wish on you." It wasn't advice. It was a confession and a plea. A glimpse into Charles's regrets, offered not with ceremony, but with humility. For William, these words were more than guidance. They were a mirror, an invitation to see himself not just as the heir, the future king, but as a brother, a father, a man still capable of choice, and yet no response has come. Not to Harry, not to the journal, not even behind palace walls. Insiders say William is torn between the crown he's sworn to serve and the brother he's drifted from. So, what are the royal gifts that King Charles left for his sons? And how did King Charles speak in those pages of the Reed Revelation? Let's find out. Charles's diary and the human behind the crown. Royal gifts are usually dazzling: crowns encrusted with centuries-old jewels, swords that once led armies, paintings of ancestors draped in velvet and power. These are the treasures that define kingship, passed from one generation to the next, like sacred relics. But King Charles broke with that tradition. He gave his son something infinitely more personal and far more dangerous. He gave Harry a diary, not just ink on paper, but a heart laid bare, filled with regret, grief, and words never spoken aloud. It's being called one of the most intimate gifts ever passed from a sovereign to a child. Some historians compare it to Edward VIII's abdication letter, private, emotional, and etched in sorrow. Others say it could become one of the most revealing royal documents in modern memory, not for what it tells us about the monarchy, but for what it reveals about the man who wore the crown. Archivists have already begun urging Harry to protect the journal, not just as a memento from his father, but as a piece of royal history that belongs in the official record. But the decision lies with Harry, and insiders say he's struggling. One part of him wants to shield it, to keep it sacred, a final message from the father he spent years trying to understand. The other part wonders if sharing it might finally help the world see Charles as he was. Not just a king, but a human being, flawed, conflicted, aching to be known. In these pages, Charles sheds the polished tone of royalty. He doesn't speak like a monarch bound by tradition and ceremony, but like a man, flawed, vulnerable, and searching. His words reveal the weight of duty pressing against a quieter, deeper longing, the desperate need to connect, to be truly understood. The journal may be closed, but the world is still listening. Whispers are becoming louder beyond the gates of Windsor, and what's said next could shape not only Charles's legacy, but the very soul of the crown. King Charles's private words. Go public. The moment the leak broke, the world didn't pause, it ignited. News that King Charles had gifted Prince Harry a private handwritten journal written after Princess Diana's death spread like wildfire. This wasn't just another royal scoop, it was a deeply emotional bombshell. Headlines lit up, podcasts pivoted, group chats buzzed, and social media exploded. Within hours, hashtags like #Charles Journal and #Forgive Him were trending worldwide. Reactions were raw and immediate. Thousands praised the king for showing rare vulnerability, calling the journal a long overdue glimpse behind palace walls. This made me cry, one post read, echoed by thousands more. For many, this was the first time Charles felt real, more father than figurehead. Others, though, were skeptical. Is this healing or manipulation? Asked one viral tweet. A weaponized apology, declared another. Still, public sympathy for Harry soared. People remembered that iconic image of a heartbroken boy walking behind his mother's coffin. They recalled his interviews, the ones where he said he didn't feel protected, that he was expected to carry on while silently breaking inside. Now, discovering that his father had felt a similar pain, but never said a word, hit with fresh force. Royal commentators split sharply. Some hailed the journal as a sign the monarchy was finally becoming more human, less stone. A long overdue evolution. Others, particularly traditionalists, bristled. If the crown trades mystery for emotion, one warned, how long before it has no power left at all? But as public emotion surged, the palace remained still. No comment, no statement, no denial, just silence. But could it be about what Charles wrote? And what is this emotional gift drifting into? Stay close as we find out. Could Charles's diary change royal history? What began as a deeply personal gesture, a father's emotional journal given to his estranged son, has now begun to ripple into far more complicated waters. The emotional gift is drifting into the realm of politics, and behind closed doors at Westminster, the murmurs are growing louder. No official statements have been made, not yet, but in back hallways and private conversations, members of Parliament are quietly raising pressing questions. A handful of MPs, particularly those who support greater royal transparency, are asking, is it appropriate for a reigning monarch to share private regrets over public tragedies while staying silent in the official record? Some are even beginning to debate whether this journal, with its raw mentions of Diana's death, royal succession, and emotional strain under crown protocol, might be more than just a family heirloom. Could it be considered a historical or constitutional document? Others dismiss that, calling it a private keepsake. But the debate isn't cooling, it's heating up. What worries some is the precedent. If a king's private reflections on national events are leaked or released, what comes next? Could personal writings influence policy debates, public funding tied to royal duties, or even succession laws? Could a diary one day be subpoenaed or cited in parliamentary discussions? Because this isn't just about what Charles wrote, it's about what those words mean. For generations, the monarchy has been built on restraint, on symbol rather than speech. But the journal challenges that. It introduces emotion into a role designed to rise above it. Parliament isn't reacting out of spite, but out of duty. They've now seen a king wrestling with history, grief, and responsibility, not in public speeches, but in private ink. If additional journals exist, or if Harry ever chooses to release the complete one, the impact could go far beyond healing family rifts. Such revelations might challenge centuries-old royal norms, influence public perception, and even spark discussions that could reshape the monarchy's role in modern Britain. So, is the story just about crowns, royal traditions, or titles? Or is it about a boy that later found strength after sadness, and that could never be replaced? Stay with us till end. The crown, the child, and the ghost of Diana. In the end, this story isn't just about crowns, titles, or royal traditions. It's about something far more familiar. It's about being human. It's about a boy who lost his mother too soon, and a father who, after years of silence, finally found the strength to give his son a piece of her that words could never replace. It's a story stitched together with regret, hope, timing, and the fragile beginnings of healing. And at the heart of it all, just a few lines written long ago by a woman who never got to watch her sons become men. One sentence, whispered from the past, "They won't understand your heart," has now echoed far beyond palace walls. In a world that constantly asks us to blend in, to be quiet, to follow the rules, and hide our true feelings, Diana's words remain defiant. She told her son, and in a way all of us, that being misunderstood doesn't make you wrong. It makes you real. And sometimes, realness is the bravest thing you can offer. Some will say this was all a performance, a well-timed distraction, a polished play to soften a family image. Others will insist it came from love, from truth, from a long-delayed awakening. The reality? It's probably a bit of both. Because life is never just one thing. It's complicated. Families even more so. But when love finally rises through all the noise, through history, pain, silence, and expectation, it has a way of shrinking everything else. Suddenly, the protocol, the politics, and the PR all feel a little less important. Because at its core, this isn't a royal drama. It's a human one. A son trying to understand the father he barely knew. A father trying, at last, to be understood. And the memory of a mother who saw it all before anyone else. So what do you think about the journal King Charles gave to Prince Harry? Does he really deserve it? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.